All right, guys, so we're back today. What's the date today? The 14th?
15th.
Today's the 15th. So
15th of November.
15th of November, we got access to a new chunk of land that neither of us have been to, but there's a lot of deer in the area. And so we worked our way to the top of the ridge, but why don't you break down kind of hunting a new spot? It's November 15th. Why did we kind of hunt the way that we did? Because we kind of set up a little bit, kind of where we had a bunch of corridors, walkways coming, and there was just a heck of a lot of sign.
A lot of sign. So when there's that much sign, you're not really sure. Well, and let's back up a second. We're basically hunting a bowling alley. It's maybe 500, 600 yards long by 200 yards wide. So we're hoping to pull deer off of the neighbors or do the best we can. And the trails kind of work, across it all the way up. Never been here before, so potentially what we're looking for are fresh and well-used rub lines. I can't explain how much better it is if you find a rub line. I'm not talking about finding one tree that a deer rubbed. I'm talking about you find one tree that a deer rubbed, you look up and there's another one 25 yards, and there's another one, and then there's another one. You know he's using that. You also know what direction he's traveling, because whatever side of that tree it's on, that's the way he works it. So that gives you advantages, especially if you know the way the wind's working. So we were looking for that. We didn't see a lot of rub lines, but doesn't mean that there isn't one on the neighboring property that we couldn't have potentially called a buck off of. So we worked our way up calling, we were rattling. Generally this time of year, I don't rattle as much. I really try and save that for late October because I think it's better.
Kind of the pre-rut.
Yeah, the pre-rut. I think it's just better to. I think you have better odds of drawing him in to that fight, because we got to remember that the rut is a marathon, and it goes in stages. It's seeking, chasing, standing. So during the seeking phase, that's when we see most of our bucks, and you hear the wives' tale. Oh, the rut's already on. It's over. They were all rutting last week. Well, they were chasing and checking. Doesn't mean that they were ready. And most of the deer that you're seeing doing that are inexperienced deer. They're 3 years old and under. Sometimes there'll be a 4-year-old that maybe hasn't quite caught on, but most of it is 3 and under. Then you're going to see the chasing, and that's when they're really pushing does. The doe might be pretty close, but she's not ready. When you see them standing like we did that buck last weekend, Saturday, that means she's within a day or two, and he knows it. Besides that, we know he was a mature buck. He was a fully mature buck, probably in the 6-year-old range, 5 to 6 years old. He's been around the block. He knows what she smells like, and he doesn't want to leave her, because as soon as she comes in, he's going to breed her. Remember this as well. Any doe that does not get bred on that first cycle comes in again 22 to 24 days later. So there's no way that the rut is 1 week and over. It keeps going all through the month of November, and depending on where you're at, even into December. I know in the Cascades, you get up in there, those bucks will be rutting just into the first week of December. So we thought we'd give it a shot. It's a long shot. He had me climb to top of Mount Sarabachi, or as we call it here, Nebo. But it was, you have to go and survey the ground that you're hunting. You have to walk through it. I think it's better to do it directly after season. As soon as if you get a new piece of ground, what I have, or let's say there's a spot I want to hunt, but I've never been in it. Well, instead of screwing it up or potentially screwing it up, oftentimes I'll hunt the spots I know, because I know how to get around in there, and then directly after season ends, I walk it. And I'm checking the wind, and I'm looking at everything. You might get in there and be like, gosh, there hasn't been a deer in here in 10 years, so what's the point? But you've got to try, right? And this is a spot that not everybody can hunt. So that's one of the reasons that we decided to come here tonight and give it a whirl.
And there's a lot of deer in here, and we've had pictures, friends sent us pictures of neighboring properties with great bucks, and so this has kind of always been a good area for the bucks, because it's not a highly pressured area. But so yeah, we're gonna go ahead and actually go back into kind of like the podcasting form, the studio form. You'll see us filming and podcasting in there, going to more in depth, and then we're gonna keep trying to call one in and get one in on film and shoot one on film, just so you guys can see how we're kind of doing it. But definitely I think realistically we had a really good shot. If there was a deer in earshot, we probably would have got him to come in.
We could have, and that's the other thing about this location. It's very difficult. Right there is the interstate, and on the other side of the hill that we started on is town.
It's sirens going off.
Sirens were going off,
dogs.
and the dogs got to howling, and it makes it really difficult for the deer to hear you if they're
Yeah.
any kind of distance. And if we'd have been doe bleating and grunting exclusively, there was no chance they'd hurt us.
I could barely hear you 50 or 40 yards up the hill.
Yeah.
And just constantly cars and stuff going by. But that's a challenge to this spot. But I think this spot's still definitely worth.
Oh, absolutely.
Coming
There's
back
a
to.
lot of movement that goes through. They're
Yeah.
moving through here and coming through here all the time. This ridge line, they're going to grab this ridge line and run it anywhere they want to go. If they want to be over there, once they hit this ridge, they can be over there in no time. It'd take us no time flat to walk to those towers, and it's even less for a deer.
Oh, for sure.
So, I think the only other thing, I'd like to hit on is that here, where we're hunting, the seeking phase and the chasing phase is kind of over. So they're probably more in the standing phase. It would have been great if we had a nice quiet morning, relatively quiet morning, and we could have done some more bleats and grunts. I think that would have upped our odds of drawing a buck in. Know what they're doing where you're hunting. That's very important. If you're not seeing as much movement and you don't see them chasing does like you did, they're probably starting to stand with them. And that's when you want to switch up your tactics from the rattling more to the bleating and grunting.
Right.
And so you got to know what's going on in your area because it's different everywhere.
Yeah. And there is actually whitetail in this area too.
Yeah.
So-
Well, that could have been spooky because they come to the call pretty easy.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, I appreciate you coming back out, man. I
Bet.
might come back here in the morning and try your calling doe bleat and buck grunt in that travel corridor down there and see what I can't do. But yeah, let's go ahead and go back into the studio and then we'll start recording on the podcast and then finish this part of the episode up. I really hope you guys are enjoying the series. Wayne is dropping a lot of knowledge. We've had some really good feedback so far. So if you have any questions or particular areas you want us to cover that we haven't hit yet, let us know because
Absolutely.
this is the time to do it. The series has only got a couple more episodes left, and really want this is for you guys. We're wanting to really help people get the most out of their late season buck hunting. So, all right, guys. Well, I appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks.
All right, guys. So we're back in the studio. We just went hunting just over the hill over here. Got into a buck right at dark, and we're gonna come back here talk about some rub lines, scents, how a deer kind of sees, and some studies that Wayne's researched and stuff like that. And there's a lot of information we're going to cover here, but just talking kind of about rub lines here. We didn't see any rubs out there on the hill, but we set up, we called, and we worked our way up the hill. Let's pretend that we actually did come across a few rubs. What is your game plan once you start running across some sign, you start seeing some rubs, from the time that you see the first rub, what are you doing?
Well, if I come across a rub, I'm hoping it's fresh, right? Obviously, I'm looking for fresh. And then I'm going to look beyond it. And I want to see a series of them every 20 yards, 15 yards. It depends on the buck, actually. But I'm looking for a series of fresh rubs. That tells me that a buck is frequenting that area. He's there, that's his home, that's his territory. Mm-hmm. And he's going to be dominant there. And so that's what I'm going to look for first off, and that's going to be a good place that I want to set up because I know a buck's working that, and it's going to give me a direction that he's working because he's not going to have rubbed all the way around the tree. It's going to be on one side, and they should correspond. He's not going to rub this one on this side and then go and turn around and rub this one on the other side. He's going to go the direction that he likes to travel. So it gives me an idea which way he's probably going to be coming from.
Right.
So, not always. Sometimes they'll start coming back. You just don't know. Maybe you're 10 minutes behind him.
Well,
It's
if you
hard to tell.
have a line, you have one here, 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 and here. Obviously that buck went either that direction or that direction. And
Right.
if all the rubs are on this side and there's bark on this side, you can tell he was obviously rubbing.
Right.
That way. Then also, sometimes you'll get them on both sides if he's rubbing this way. I've seen bigger trees where they rub kind of like both sides of it, and then you can usually tell which way they're nicking the tree. I mean,
Absolutely.
usually you can, especially if it has eye guards. It gets pretty easy there.
Oh yeah.
So if you have a rub line and you're wanting to start hunting that rub line, talk to me about setups and some tactics that you're going to use to be able to start honing in on that buck.
Okay, so basically if I find a rub line that I want to hunt, I'm not going to hunt directly on it. I'm going to try and not even step on it if I can help it. One of the things we were talking about scents and the outlaw of scents in Oregon.
Right.
That's fine. They're going to outlaw them. I never really have been a firm believer in them because it's urine, and urine turns to ammonia within 10 or 15 minutes of it being on the ground. So you may as well pee on the ground yourself. All it's telling the deer is that something peed there. So try and get your rifle hunting buddies or your wife if she's a rifle hunter, anybody, and get the tarsal glands off your bucks. Okay, there's 3 glands on a deer. There's an orbital gland, which is in his forehead, and so when he's rubbing these trees, he's leaving a picture, he's leaving signs saying, "Yep, I was here," but he's also leaving a scent to tell other bucks, "This is my spot. Don't come here." There's an interdigital, it's in their hoof, so when you hear them blow and you see them stamp, they're leaving a scent. And then of course the tarsal glands, we all know the back leg, the dark, right there on the back leg where they pee on it, and it's stinky. Anybody that's ever shot a buck and rut knows what that is. So cut those off, put them in a freezer. I usually like to use you can use a cotton rope, little rope, or a hemp rope or something like that you can get at any of the fabric stores or Michael's or something like that. Tie it on there, throw them in a Ziploc bag, and freeze them until you're ready to use them. You can also cut out the forehead and use that too. That's if you want to make a mock rub yourself. You go up and you rub it, and then you rub, that forehead, and you're using the hair side, not the skin side when you do that. And wear gloves because you don't want to put human scent on that. I wear gloves when I hang the tarsal glands because I don't want to have any human scent.
Right.
And I try and get them up, 6-7 feet in the air so that it travels better. You put them way down low, the wind's going to drive it into the ground. So it's better if it's up a little higher. It permeates it better. And then I'm going to find myself a nice spot that I feel relatively hidden to watch from and call from. Or have my shooter sit, and then I'll get even a little bit further back and be hidden. If I'm going to be the one calling, I want to be even more hidden because he's looking for me. He's actually looking for movement. But that's kind of what I do. The tarsal glands are great to save, and they're kind of a one-time use. That's why you want to get as many as you can.
Right.
And if you're hunting deer in an area, let's say you're rifle hunting on the coast, but you're bow hunting in the valley or the Cascades, that's perfect because you've got glands from a deer or scent from a deer that doesn't belong there. He's going to know other deer. He's going to know them. So if you've got a little spike or fork and horn buck that's going around peeing or living in his same neck of the woods, he may not come to that because he doesn't feel threatened by it. He knows that deer by its scent. They're all different, and they know each other if they live around each other. But somebody from 20 miles away or even 10 miles away, he doesn't know who that is, and he doesn't want him in there chasing does or doing whatever. So cut the tarsal glands off. They want to outlaw the scent and the pee, fine. We've got other tactics we can use. And so that forehead gland, if you want to make fake rubs yourself, that's a great tool, but definitely the tarsal gland because it has the most scent.
That makes sense.
So cut them off using gloves, tie up your strings, bag them, and then they're ready to go.
So when you're hunting a rub line, what would be your kind of a call sequence? Right now it's November 15th. What would be your call sequence for a rub line, and does that change if that rub line is in a different time of the year and it's fresh?
Yeah, so I like to rattle and call and sound like fighting bucks in late October, early November. Not this late in November. Rattling works great during rifle season. It does. I mean, these bucks they're in that chasing phase, seeking chasing phase. They're amped up. You're going to see a lot of the younger bucks doing it, but if it really works best then, I think. As we start approaching this time of year, you see them starting to slow down a little bit, and they're more standing with does, and we've seen that, right? Because she's getting ready to come into estrus. We talked about it a little bit more. So that's when I'm going to use the doe bleat and the tending grunts. And I don't have a problem doing that right on that rub line, because if he hears that doe, in his neck of the woods, he's going to want to come and investigate, and he's definitely going to come if he smells another buck or hears another buck. Like, what are you doing here?
Right.
So, I think those are important tools to know. Let's talk about the reason we want to really be hidden.
Yeah, so you're going to get into a different aspect of what most people want to focus on. What colors do they see, this and that. You're going to kind of get into some sort of science stuff from the research that you've read and stuff.
Right.
So
one of the main researchers out there that I've read a lot of his studies on, their captive deer, okay, and their whitetails, and I know that's going to turn a lot of guys off, but you got to remember, a deer is a deer, and when they're rutting, they do very similar things. I don't care if he's a whitetail, blacktail, mule deer, your fallow deer, it doesn't matter. They all kind of do similar stuff. Dr. James T. Kroll has been around since the Second Coming, and he's done tons and tons of research on antler growth and vision and what they do during the rut and how they act. And so you'll see him on North American Whitetail, but you can also get online and find studies that he's done, and that's kind of what I've done. I've read a bunch and picked up stuff here and there, and one of the most interesting things that I found was his studies on what a deer sees. And a deer sees in 2-dimension on the outside of his peripheral. So when he sees you, if you're reading a book and somebody waves their hand in front of that book, you're going to see it, and it's going to make you kind of lift up, right? So if a deer catches movement that isn't natural, not a bird, not a leaf falling, but just any kind of movement that isn't natural, he looks. And when he looks, those lateral bands of his eyeballs now cross down the end of his nose. And now he can see in 3D, and he can tell distance. He knows how far you are, and he's probably going to be able to pick out what you are. And even if he can't, you're abnormal, and he ain't going to like it. So, when you're drawing, you need to be conscious of where that deer is and what he can see. So if you can see his eyes, he can see you move. So that's one thing that we really got to focus on and try and say, okay, well, here he comes. And man, they all come in differently. Some of them can be running. Well, if he's moving, you're moving, because it's harder for him to pick up movement when he's moving.
makes sense.
So if he's moving, you're moving. If he's going slow, wait till he gets behind some cover, come to full draw. You might have to hold it for a bit.
Yeah.
It happens sometimes, but just be prepared for that.
That makes sense. So outside of that, is there any other areas that we haven't covered that you were wanting to hit with the rub line, sense, and the vision?
Well, I was going to talk about, let's say you're hunting by yourself and doing this.
Okay.
Right? Because you'll see in the video, we're setting you up, and all I've got to do is man the calls,
right,
which is the easy part, I think, right? Really, it is. The guy that's behind the bow has got all the tough stuff. He's got to be paying attention to what this deer is doing. But let's say you're by yourself. It's a lot. It's a ton. You've got to pick up your bow. You've got to manipulate antlers and calls, and
it's hard.
It's hard. So my best suggestion is get one of two things. If you're going to be knelt down on the ground, get something that you can set your bow in, stick it in the ground. If you're going to stand up, get one of those bow hangers that you can screw into a tree, and it's right there, so you have minimal movement to pick it and lift it off. When you're working antlers and stuff, it's really difficult, especially if they come running in. It's almost impossible to not get caught. As a matter of fact, I don't know that I think I've always been caught if I'm by myself.
I was trying to think of the bucks that I called in by myself, and on every single one of them I got busted.
Yeah.
Before I even knew they were there, I was busted.
It's really tough.
Yeah.
So, one of the things they make is this handy little tool called a bow grunter. So this is helpful because you can clip it on your coat, clip it up here on your lapel, and then it's right there, and it requires no hands. It's hands free. So you can pick them up online. You researched it, didn't you?
Yeah, it's the butt grunter.
The bow grunter.
Bow grunter. There
Bow
we go.
grunter.
Bow grunter.
And it's a cool little tool to use if you're hunting by yourself.
Yeah.
And I'd suggest everybody have one because it's a lot better than having to, hand manipulate a grunt call.
Right, and that one actually sounds much better than the one I bought from the store, brand new, for like $15.
Yes,
$20.
So here's another thing, since you brought that up.
Yeah.
Guys, don't go with the hardwoods calls. If it's wood up top, forget it. They don't sound right. You want them to be plastic or acrylic, something like that. Most of them are, and if they'll let you pull it out of the package and test it. I mean, those, but it shouldn't sound all raspy,
Right.
like yours does.
It just sounds, I don't know. It just sounds way too high pitched, and it just sounds weird. It just sounds. It just you sound it, and it's just like, what is that?
And the other thing too, these things make noise when you pull them out. So when you set up, if you rock them back and forth and you slowly pull it out, it'll be quieter. And it's going to be different if you have it scrunched in and blow through it than it's going to be with the tube extended. You see,
Older,
it's deeper.
bigger, yeah.
So that's the other thing. I like to have the tube extended because then I can move it different directions. I mean, a buck doesn't just look one direction all the time. He might turn his head and grunt. So you can manipulate that with your hand while you're doing it. So I think I usually have the tube extended.
Okay.
But you can do it however you want. But again, the hardwoods calls for some reason just don't sound as good as the plastic ones.
And I'll put a link up for this thing, so if guys want to check it out, they can go find it pretty easy.
I think it's a great tool if you're hunting by yourself. I really do. I don't know these guys. I ain't getting paid nothing. I'm just telling you from experience. If I'm by myself, usually hunting by myself, I don't rattle because it's
too much movement.
And you'll be with the antlers in your hand.
Yeah.
Every time.
Well, tomorrow when I was going to go out in the morning, I was going to bring my doe bleat and my buck snort.
That's what I
or
would do.
butt grunter or whatever. Yeah.
And you'll notice in the video that I use the grunt call with the snort wheeze tube on it.
Yeah.
And I use it a lot. You've heard me.
A lot, yeah. Towards the beginning, you use the blow, the snort wheeze, the most.
Yeah, because generally right before these bucks fight, there's a little pissing match where they'll circle each other and they'll bristle up and they'll snort wheeze back and forth.
Right.
And a lot of times they don't ever lock antlers. The ones I've actually watched, they'll snort wheeze back and forth. Last year I had a great experience where there were 4 bucks, 4 of them, walking around snort wheezing like mad.
Really?
And they never, ever locked antlers, any of them. They'd go over there and rub the poison oak, they'd rub a tree, and they'd snort wheezed and just like, I was with a guy and he's like, what is that noise? And I said, they're snort wheezing. He goes, I've never heard them do that. I'm like, oh yeah. So it is part of the ruse. And again, if you're calling, you need to add it all. That's why you see me rattling along the ground and making noise, because if there's brush and there's leaves, they're going to make that noise.
Makes sense.
And so you have to add all that into it if you want it to sound realistic.
Perfect.
So I think we've got a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, well, we've got enough for this segment of it, and be sure, guys, if you have questions or you have areas that you want Wayne or us to cover out in the woods, let us know. We're doing this to help you guys get the most out of your late season. This is geared towards blacktail, but I'm sure a lot of it would spill over towards whitetail. Geographically, time frame wise, might change a little bit, might be earlier or later. but there's a lot that either a whitetail hunter could use, and all of this a blacktail hunter for sure could use. So
Sure.
Appreciate you coming back on, and we're not done with this yet, so we still have more work to do on this, but I hope you guys have enjoyed the series, and yeah, keep staying with us, and we'll come out with more content here very soon.
Thanks.